Before I even begin this video, I want to say allow me to speak my piece before you come to any conclusion, because I promise you this is not where you think it is going at all. By the end, you will hopefully understand that the goal of articles like the one I will debate in this video and the games that these people are using to divide us are chosen to fan flames and so divide and not grow unity. But oh boy, here we go with probably one of the most volatile things I've seen in a while, and I already know everyone is going to have their own opinions on this that will vary all over. But today I want to talk about something that will definitely cause everyone to get mad, which is the political firestorm that is gripping everything currently, and specifically how the games industry, as well as just mainstream news, tends to view everyone they disagree with as being Yahtzees. It's stupid, I know. I can't even say the word on YouTube because of their policies, but you know what I mean. Yahtzees, or Nazi, you know, the German movement to World War II, that kind of was the main force. The entire world was pretty much fighting as they threatened all of existence back then during World War II. Look, I'm going to state this now so everyone just knows I don't align myself in any way with the Yahtzee movement, okay? A bit of lore for you as well. My grandfather and a few of his own siblings were the only surviving members of my father's side of the family during World War II. My grandfather was thrown into concentration camps where he saw his entire family ripped away from him. He never saw his sister again. His parents were taken by Germans, and their fate was unknown to him all the way until he passed away in his 80s. The only reason my grandfather was kept alive by the Germans was because he was a carpenter. He knew how to build things with his hands, so he was seen as useful. He also had a knack for understanding languages quickly, so my grandfather, who was a full-blooded Armenian man born into a Christian household, was able to speak, of course, Armenian and then German, of course, to communicate while in the camps and whatnot, as well as other various languages in Europe that he learned from other captives and then some in the camps. He, of course, learned to also speak Serbian as well, and after the war met my grandmother, who was a full-blood Serbian, obviously, and the rest is history, of course. I was told my entire life that Yahtzees were bad because they are. They decimated my family. On my mother's side even, her grandfather swindled the Yahtzees too. He would actually work with them, and they would give him, her grandfather, people to dispose of. And then my mom's grandfather would then falsify the documents of these captives that the Yahtzees would give him, and then he would give those people new identities, and then smuggle them out of the country, without them knowing, while giving fake documents to the Yahtzees, claiming that those people that they were given were dead on paper, but they were very much alive actually. So my entire family history on both sides has been nothing but completely altered and changed for the rest of time by the wake of World War II. I lost people I never got to meet. Entire bloodlines in my family tree were pretty much decimated due to that war alone. So before anyone ever tries to claim that I'm somehow a sympathizer to the Yahtzee movement or somehow aligned with them, I want you to know this from my own mouth that is not true, and it will never be. But what I hate more than anything is how the media, from games to TV to movies, everything, just all of it, weaponizes this political divide and uses it to dehumanize those they disagree with. So now that I dropped my lore, let's continue on to the subject of this video, which ties into everything I want to explain, which is this article from Kotaku, which is titled, "For Wolfenstein 3 to be good, it needs to punch Yahtzees even harder. The sequel could arrive in the twilight of a second Trump presidency." As you can see, I even have to censor out the words and even the armbands because of YouTube's policies. I can already tell making this video is going to be exhausting, let alone talking about it. But as you can see, Kotaku, a website that has largely lost their viewer base after victimizing and attacking them for years with mass layoffs over plenty of years too, has now decided to go full-blown pure-blood fanatic is what I would really call them this time. So these pure-blooded journalists are the types who believe that they're on the winning side always, believing that their shouting of punch every Yahtzee and everyone I disagree with is one in which I have to make this video in the first place. Like I said before, my entire life was shaped by the outcomes of World War II. My family forever changed due to the actions of the Germans during that time period. My family was white, by the way, Serbians to be exact, and my family fought against this threat and bled like any other person. But even I think when the current trajectories of the world is going, especially with how journalists throw terms around so easily like this, is doing nothing but harming the world for the worst. Claiming that a game needs us to punch the bad guys harder because of a president they hate that's currently in power is pretty much insane. The thing is that there's a lot of problems in the world, but it's division that is the true poison. Nobody can get along anymore. It's either us or them. There's no more nuance, no real tangible way of really understanding each other if either party has even a slight disagreement in ideology, which happens all of the time. The rise of that German threat in World War II was not just a conservative-minded movement. To understand the rise of Hitler, you need to realize he was someone who played everyone. He was left, he was right, he was everything he needed to be, and his ideology and viewpoints were actually a mixture of the most extreme versions of any political ideology that he could find that would result in what he would eventually create when he made his party what it ended up being. Again, my family are Christians. By definition, the majority of them were born and raised in a right-wing-esque way of living by today's standards. Family is everything. Get married, have children, respect the values and ideals of your nation and be proud of who you are and all that. Yet even when my family alongside thousands of Serbian soldiers fought the Germans during World War II anyways, how does that make any sense then? Why would the Serbians fight a threat that the left sees by definition to be something they should have embraced then? Some Serbians did, sure, the same way some Italians aligned with Germany as well during the war. And there's other places, there's always outliers, but the vast majority of Serbians said no and fought and died protecting their homeland from Hitler and his armies. I know this because my mom told me how her own family was losing sons over the war plenty too. They died protecting their loved ones. I never once thought to myself, because we were Christian, that we were in a sense, as these sorts of crazy people view people today, to be anyway seen as a Yahtzee sympathizer group. My family hates what the Germans did in that war. All I heard growing up was how my family fought with blood and steel to defend their nation. Yet every time I come online in this digital world, someone is calling me the very thing that destroyed my family back then, and I honestly hate it because I am not one of those people. I will never be. But trying to claim that games now need to use their platform like machine games with Wolfenstein in some way to counter Trump or something is just going to honestly cause more divide, which is also only going to cause even more chaos. As Kotaku said there in their opening paragraph for you to see, the hope they have for the sequel to Wolfenstein the New Colossus, that they don't want it to ease up on the gas. They want the game to instead push for more extreme content and rattle the cages, so to speak. Kotaku continued with this: Wolfenstein the New Colossus was an entirely different story. Arriving in the fall of 2017, the New Colossus struck like lightning. Its unveiling and marketing beats reveled in the joy of ripping fascists to shreds while leaning into the dystopic headlines Americans increasingly became inundated with. It adopted the punch Yahtzees now ask questions later ideology that emerged amid Donald Trump's first presidency and the rise of the alt-right. The thing is that New Colossus didn't target Trump at all. It was in development before he was even in the race, and that doesn't even make any sense. The game would have came out even if a Democratic president was in charge, so what then? What would it be saying? Nothing. It's just a sequel to a game. You can't claim that New Colossus was somehow a game specifically designed to attack a president that they didn't even know was going to be president before the game came out. Again, it came out a year into his presidency at the time. That would insinuate that it was at least 2 or 3 years in development by the time he was even elected pretty much. Yet still you took something and simply applied it to something you hated to make yourself feel better. This is the kind of rhetoric that worries me and I'm tired of it. It's too much division. And the problem is that whenever people are met with facts on things, if those facts don't suddenly align with their belief systems to a T, they just choose to ignore them instead. At one point during the Kotaku article, they bring up that lady who got shot by the ICE officer in Minneapolis. That has been on the news for a really long time now. I'm not going to show any footage of what went down there, but you obviously know what I'm talking about. But anyway, as seen here, in Kotaku's article, they speak on the ICE officer and how ICE in general is, according to Kotaku, Trump's personal police force, and that the deportation of illegals is something they oppose because it's seen as a far-right thing. Despite the fact that if you simply use Google and look it up yourself as seen here, the presidents with the highest deportation numbers are actually liberal presidents, with Barack Obama, for example, having a much higher deportation number of over 3 million illegal immigrants removed compared to Trump. Bush and Clinton got rid of over 2 million people each as well during their presidencies, yet despite this happening, none of this is brought up as ammunition against these presidents ever. Kotaku and places like them hate that illegal immigrants are being deported, yet they conveniently ignore when other presidents have done far more in their runs. Why is that? Probably because those presidents were liberal. I think the only reason why is simply because people weren't following ICE agents around during the Obama era when they were deporting those over 3 million immigrants, which again, completely burns right over what Trump is doing now. Some may say I'm defending Trump here, but what I am saying is that if we're going to have these gaming journalist websites bestowing these flames and trying to make gamers all mad or whatever and trying to attack a president and all this, okay, we need to be fair across everything. If Machine Games then has to press the gas pedal, as Kotaku said with a Wolfenstein 3, then the Let's Punch Fascists for Deportations should then also include nods to Obama, Clinton, and Bush, and that's just to name a few. But we all know it won't because that's not what the gaming news media or industry believes, despite the proof proving that the people they support are just as bad, and if not even worse than the very same categories these people claim to care about. Like how, as seen here, Obama's administration dropped the equivalent of a bomb somewhere in the world every 3 hours during his entire presidency. Look, I'm not defending any of these presidents dropping bombs, by the way, but can we stop being children and realize that they all do the exact same thing, no matter what ideology or political thing they are? And this is what I mean. When I see Kotaku trying to weaponize their outrage for clicks, it doesn't just come off as annoying to me, it comes off as frankly dangerous. The truth is that I think Kotaku wants things to get worse on purpose so that they can use it to fuel their engines. That's what they really care about, and it's very obvious. They're omitting real-world data and history from their articles on Wolfenstein 3 just to rally readers and other publications, to then just start up further dividing their audiences places even more. It didn't work for Kotaku in the past because, like I said, many of their staff already got laid off or trying to do the very same things they're doing now too. But I think now Kotaku probably doesn't care anymore. They want more bloodshed, they want more divide, they want games media and the very development studios to make games that sow more discourse on purpose. My whole angle was always to destroy the discourse, remove it at the nerve, and try to bring everyone to an equal understanding that none of this is going to help anyone, and showing just how hypocritical many of these outlets are seemingly all of the time. Like I said, the rise of Yahtzee stuff is an amalgamation of all ideologies. It's actually so evil I wouldn't even consider it left or right at that point, because it takes the worst elements of both sides and becomes its own spectrum. Like, the best way I can describe it is if left is liberalism and right is conservatism, then the Yahtzee belief system is like somewhere on the far end of both sides, if that makes sense. And with how vitriolic games media has been, especially to white players, has been nothing short of disgusting too, because it's not like it was only minorities that lost their lives during World War II or something due to all of this either. Like, for example, a simple Google search would tell you, as seen here, that the people who suffered the most losses during World War II was actually Russia. They had almost 27 million of their own citizens pass from either military-related stuff or like famine and then some. 19 million civilians passed during World War II, a number we can't even fathom today if that many people were suddenly taken out in like such a short period of time. Despite many history books trying to hide the truth from you, in actuality it was the combined effort of the Americans, the British, and the Soviets, and really everyone else obviously, that took down Germany for good. The Soviets actually would arm their women and children to fight due to how hellbent Hitler was on conquering Russia at the time. And if entire cities were looking to be captured by the German forces, the Russians would literally burn their own cities to the ground and starve to death to ensure that the Germans couldn't use those towns and cities as bases to then prepare themselves for further conquest further into Russia's homeland. Like, you need to realize, guys, the way these gaming journalism websites depict and present their information is so skewed and hateful, it's just insane. It's why I have to make this video. The actual history of what went down during World War II is way more than what you think it is, what your high school teacher taught you. Millions of people perished during that war. My own country of Serbia lost countless of their own countrymen fighting the Germans too. In 1941, there was a massive resistance that birthed out of Serbia to fight against the German advance. You had Yugoslavian partisans led by leaders like Tito that would go into guerrilla-style warfare to sabotage and destroy the Germans, to also halt their advances and then push them out of Serbia. All of these white people in white countries fighting the Germans who were also white. Like, you see what I mean? It was white nations that stopped the Germans, because even they did not agree with what Hitler was doing at all, clearly. You can't sit there and believe that places like Kotaku will give you any sort of nuance, though, when it comes to this. They just want to sow more discord amongst the populace because at their heart, they are full of hate and they know it. Kotaku knows what they're doing too, as seen here. I highlighted it for you, but they bring up on how in Wolfenstein the New Colossus, there's a sequence where you have to end BJ, that's the main character's own father, in a flashback scene because BJ's father claims America is a white man's world now. But again, I understand what Machine Games was trying to convey there, but we need to realize this overtly weaponizing of hate specifically towards white-skinned individuals is always going to be a zero-sum game. The absolute truth with it, like whether Kotaku wants to admit it or not, is that the threat that the Germans placed on the world was ended largely by white men as well. The very white men you stigmatized were who was able to then free the world from the clutches of Hitler. Like, that cannot be denied. That is what happened. Every group of people, regardless of skin color, has racism and xenophobic beliefs in them. It's not a unique idea to white people somehow either. I do think the other big problem is that places like Kotaku and the Western media in general is that they place 21st century ways of thinking against 20th century political definitions. In terms of America today, the right, so to speak, is pro-freedom of speech, a free market, gun ownership, and small government. With these in mind, all of this is technically against what fascism or the Germans upheld during World War II, when Wolfenstein takes place, of course. The problem is that we are talking about these gaming journalists are saying, or what these game developers may believe and place their belief systems in current day against ideologies that were not even remotely indicative of what they were back then. For example, a liberal in America today would view themselves as a social liberal. Yet in Europe, classic liberalism would be viewed by people living in America today as being a center-right position instead. Meaning the liberals in Europe versus America, where Kotaku operates, of course, would oppose each other despite technically both being liberal. Are you confused yet? Because I'm sorry, but this is why all of this is stupid to begin with. In actuality, Hitler himself has even specifically claimed that the basis of his political party would be considered a syncretic movement, which by definition, as seen here from Google, a syncretic movement is a fusion of diverse beliefs, cultures, or philosophies into a new unified system, blending elements from multiple sources to create something distinct yet recognizable from its origins, common in religion, culture, and politics. It's a melting pot where traditions merge, unlike multiculturalism, which keeps them separate, results in unique expressions. That is how Hitler's party was structured. It's a melting pot of all belief systems of any side. Wolfenstein has done a good job, mostly I would guess, of portraying this, although they do screw their own story at times too. And I can never forgive Youngblood for existing, because that game was just complete unfettered garbage no matter how much anyone tries to justify that game. Seriously, it was really bad. But anyways, the fact that Kotaku, and I'm sure other websites that will jump on this bandwagon of hate will try to do, is say that all gamers who oppose them are right-wing Yazis should understand that their enemies in this ever-war of stupid are also morons who also can't tell you without fear what a woman even is to begin with either. The point is that I believe the overall absolute state, if you will, of the games industry and how people view one another is so skewed and messed up and downright stupid that words at this point mean nothing anymore to most. Being called something or even getting labeled these days is pointless because the people calling you something don't even know what they're saying half the time anyways. Like, remember when that Obsidian art director tried to claim that he hated Elon Musk and all that other stuff, and then people found out that he was only willing to hire non-white people at Obsidian? And then Chris Avallone, one of the founders of Obsidian, said that the art director, named Matt Hansen by the way, could be fired for hiring based on skin color and omitting others too. Even Asmongold reacted to this. Here's a screen cap of that by the way, but by definition what Matt Hansen of Obsidian confirmed when he openly admitted that he would only hire black people for jobs over white people, that by definition, is that not a racial purity ideology, like staring us in the face? Does that not by definition mean that this Matt Hansen of Obsidian is pushing some weird pseudo-like version of racial purity when it comes to his hiring practices then? But it's fine if he does that because the people who benefit aren't white, which is why Kotaku won't write a hit piece on that. Like, you see what I mean? What you have to understand here is that fundamentally at their core, these people in games or on the news, in politics, whatever, they are swindling you with easy buzz terms to simply radicalize you to not only follow you, but it's also just as beneficial to make you angry against them because then they can use that to their advantage as well. Either way, they're going to get what they want, which is why I think it's important to drive a stake in this heart before it gets too crazy if you ask me. Because we don't need more division. We don't need gaming journalists who are hypocrites trying to sow more and more discourse. They don't even understand on a fundamental level what the words they throw as hateful even mean in the first place. When the very definition of what terms like Yahtzee even means have lost so much meaning when it's basically two sides of people who don't agree with what the Germans did, fighting over who gets to call the other the buzzword first, I guess, in today's culture war. Hitler's ideology also was a total dictatorship, and at their core, the principles of such a group like this would be vehemently against concepts like freedom of speech of their citizens as well as the freedom of the press. This same group that Hitler ran, which according to Kotaku, conveys what the current American government is, and this is why Wolfenstein must punch harder, I guess, would have to then be a government that uses violence to silence their political opponents, yet last time I checked, Charlie Kirk wasn't a liberal, was he? Not to mention what I just explained as in what a totalitarian dictatorship is, you could easily quantify and place those labels against not only Germany of its time, but also the Soviets with communism, as well as Italians and their fascist governments at the time as well. Yet the Soviets, like I said, were instrumental in defeating the Germans, so as you can see, Kotaku won't tell you any of this, and what you need to understand is that the world and how things work are far less black and white as you would expect. Everything instead is gray. You can't just say that Hitler is right, okay? No, he was everything. He would take anything he could from any ideology if it benefited him, and if you disagree with that, then you know that you're lying to yourself. Even Mussolini, a famous fascist dictator of Italy, believed that a totalitarian dictatorship must remove the individualism of the people to ensure that they follow the rules of the government. That doesn't sound like America at all these days. People are free to say whatever they want online, and the First Amendment protects them either way. By definition, then, what Kotaku equates as fascism with the current presidency they hate and why they want game developers to now quantify that hatred, I guess, and the propaganda sold to the masses is just wrong on all fronts already. The very existence of your articles being allowed to be shared online freely, Kotaku, means that you don't live in a dictatorship or some Yahtzee government. Because if you did, your website would already be taken down, your freedoms would be stripped, and you would be censored and thrown in jail or even worse. It's kind of like how Britain is right now with their online policies, by the way. You can't even make a joke on X in Britain or they'll just throw you in jail. That's what a real dictatorship-like quality is, but Kotaku won't attack Britain because the government there is left-leaning, go figure, of course. So what you need to understand is that the very thing that goes away when it comes to an actual totalitarianism-like structure is freedom of speech. So America, by definition, is not that. You can hate the country, Kotaku, I guess, weaponize your readers, but deep down, your continued existence is contrary to your own personal beliefs being true. What you need to realize is that the majority of people are mostly in the middle with left and right ideologies on either sides, but the best and most realistic way to really look at how real politics exist and what Wolfenstein and games like that fight against is kind of like this. Imagine the political spectrum of every conceivable position as a horseshoe, okay? This ties to the theory that is well known, which is literally called the horseshoe theory. Basically, if you imagine all politics as a horseshoe with each ends of the horseshoe being the extreme left or the extreme right of the political spectrum, what you then come to realize is that the only 2 points in politics that actually have anything in common are the extreme versions of the very parties that are always trying to control you. This means that the right-wing fascists, as they say, actually have nothing in common with common right-wingers, nor do they have anything in common with common left-wingers. But they have a lot in common with the far left's communists instead too. And in that way, both the communists and the fascists, so to speak, want you stripped of your individuality. They both want your freedom of speech gone. They both want your ability to own property and much more gone as well. That is how you should view the enemies in World War II and even in games like Wolfenstein, Call of Duty, and then some as well. These Yahtzees that you slaughter are not right-wingers, nor are they even left-wingers. They are the perfect fusion, or I guess unfortunate fusion, if you will, of the absolute worst elements of both parties that are placed into these human meatballs for you to now slaughter that have been brainwashed by a man who views all political sides honestly as a joke. Effectively meaning that when you buy into the elements and ideas that, oh, of course I want to play Wolfenstein because I want to shoot right-wingers, you're actually buying a game where you're shooting left-wingers too. You're just too stupid to realize how easily fooled you really can be, and are instead buying into the very hands of the people who benefit from your outrage and lack of brain power to even see the difference. You need to be smarter than that, otherwise you will be destroyed by that extreme version of the very people you thought you were aligned with, regardless of whichever side of the spectrum you're on. Like I said, if my family, who are Christians, likely conservative in nature, looked at the German military and went, what the hell is even going on there? By definition, what Kotaku believes that was my family was suddenly somehow liberals when they weren't. Like, the two extremes are so freaking messed up beyond any belief that it's these extremists like Kotaku, who I would consider far left, that actually they have more in common, honestly, with the very Yahtzees that you're shooting and maiming in all these games than you and I do. Like, the Kotaku writers and editors and people like them, they see the world in black and white. They see people not for who they are, but how they want to perceive them instead. The very person who wrote this article in Wolfenstein is just another one of those very soldiers in those uniforms that you can slaughter in those games. And they don't even realize it because their own hatred has consumed them so much. My worry is that the people at Machine Games will also have gotten so far off the deep end with their messaging and politics that they won't even realize they're basically making a game about slaughtering the very kinds of people who are making the game in the first place in an ideology sense. But they'll go, but I'm not a Yahtzee, but I do want the right to live in fear. I do want to dox them. I do want them arrested. Wait, I actually do want my government-approved candidates to have the power to censor the people I don't like who have speech that I don't agree with. Yeah, that kind of makes you more like a Yahtzee than you even realize yourselves. You're becoming the very thing you hated so much, and you're not even realizing it. That's the greatest fallacy of all. These people are so hateful. They don't know the difference anymore. The Yahtzees also famously burned many books on stuff like communism and more, but they would also censor their political opponents and write hit pieces aplenty against any who opposed them and cause damage to property and incite riots to increase political control. Wow, that sounds a little left-leaning to me, but part of that is right too. Wow, almost as if they're the worst of everyone or something, and not just one simple ideological force for you to conveniently place them in or something too. Who could have imagined that happening? Like, don't forget that Germany at the height of Hitler's power, they had nationalized healthcare, and their government was involved in every iota of their nation's well-being. So a good term to use here is big government to explain how Hitler ran Germany, and by definition, conservatism runs on small government, which is the exact opposite of how they ran it. And the Germans were also not okay with things like the free market, which by definition is a conservative talking point to a T. They didn't like capitalism, but wait, the conservatives love capitalism and the liberals hate capitalism. But if Hitler also didn't like capitalism, does that make them, you see what I mean? It's neither. Every example you could give of what the force in Wolfenstein is placed around to fight, or Call of Duty, or anything, or what Kotaku pushes here, it's all being lost in nuance, lost in what it means, and it's being conveniently placed to anger you and not educate you at all. It's better to keep you stupid and angry, honestly, but hell, I bet most people who watch this video learned a thing or two for sure. The point is that I don't want the games industry or whatever to believe that they are in some revolutionary fighter war and some like guerrilla thing where they're just making content, when they are nothing close to that. And this sort of mentality will only bear like more activist types when that's the last thing we all need right now. The point is that when you play Wolfenstein or whatever else as either a liberal or a conservative-minded person, what you need to understand wholeheartedly is that the enemies that you are facing are neither opposing side of any political divide. Instead, what you are facing is a dark mirror, the worst version of what happens when either side of any political aisle gains the upper hand and actualizes their beliefs to an extreme degree. Again, the horseshoe theory, guys, look it up. I promise you, it'll make you understand things so much better and let you realize just how crazy and far gone people are. Not just in video games, but like on Twitter, YouTube, anywhere. It applies across everything. Killing Yahtzees is not a left-winger or right-winger thing. It's just the extreme of both. And the lefties out here who salivate at the idea of, oh, I get to shoot right-wingers in a game, suck at Trump, are the very milquetoast sub-80 IQ morons these sorts of publications and game studios want to weaponize instead. If Machine Games is smart, they'll make sure they make the distinction. If they claim the threat is right-wing only, you'll know they lost the plot completely years ago already, pretty much. And they have given in entirely to drinking that Kool-Aid to the last drop too. But this article from Kotaku is not only wrong, but dangerous. I'm not going to call it to be censored. I'm not going to say we need to dox anybody or whatever else. All we need to realize is that these people, they want you to hate everything because it's the only way they can exist, okay? They need you to hate things. And I'm here to tell you, as someone with real ties to that war, to the blood that soaked Europe, don't fall for this propaganda. Don't give in to that hate. Don't let these people brainwash you. And always ask questions yourselves, because you're better than this. You are stronger, and you never need to stoop to the level of these journalists to understand them from their position. They're already lost and hateful and miserable piles of flesh masquerading as like human beings in a world they just want to tear down because they couldn't succeed in their own endeavors. So they want everyone to be just as miserable as they are. Please don't become like them because that's what they would want. So thank you for watching. I hope this video helped you understand. Please share it if it did. Subscribe and all that. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys next time.